Hello, this is a readout of an article that I wrote for Shedding of the Ego. The article is called Epigenetics, Telegony, and Fatherhood. This article is something that I think is very important and will create a lot of questions for a lot of you guys. I wrote the article. I don't think a lot of people care a lot about science, but this article is very crucial on a lot of the things that we talk about in MGTOW. I will have associated pictures there so you can also have a look and understand what I'm talking about at the same time. So let's start with the article. This article is going to discuss inheritance and genetics and a new finding that may affect how we view inheritance. We're all very familiar with genetic inheritance, that is, that each one of us has inherited our father's and our mother's DNA material. The combination of their DNA material is expressed in proteins and different types of cellular types that eventually have formed us. In fact, our current level of understanding only contains genetic inheritance, which may be affected by epigenetic influences to your environment. Therefore, I want to discuss with you a different mode of inheritance called telegony, and the paper is cited below. For those that are lazy and do not want to read the paper, I will quickly summarize it here. This paper included an experiment with initially virgin flies. From these flies, they mated the females with first sterilized male flies, which still produce semen, and following 2 weeks they mated those female flies again with non-sterilized male flies. The experiment results show that the resulting offspring closer resembled to the phenotype of the sterile flies, while the PCR analysis showed that the resulting offspring were the direct genetic descendants of the non-sterilized flies. The results were shocking, which led to a page-and-a-half of discussion. And this is where things get interesting. The most important question to ask following this is the experiment relevant? Yes, it is, as it questions our current level of understanding and brings forward many worthwhile questions. Are the results statistically significant? Well, apparently so. Are the methods they used appropriate? Yes. Therefore, the next and most important question is, what affects DNA expression in these animals if there is no DNA transfer? Well, the answer to that is that we simply do not know. The authors have termed this phenomenon telegony. However, something must be affecting the DNA expression. As for the phenotype to change, the proteins from the DNA need to be expressed. There must be an epigenetic effect acting on the DNA. And if there is no male DNA there, then the epigenetic effect must be acting on the female DNA, the female eggs that are sitting there. How that happens, well, I personally have no idea, and no one really has any ideas at present. But let's present the case for humans. Is such an effect possible for humans? If you consider that the majority of earlier experiments regarding DNA have occurred on fruit flies, the results become a lot more relevant. Now, anatomically speaking, I don't see this as not possible. The woman's reproductive organs allow for the sperm and semen transfer from vagina to uterus up the fallopian tubes, and then they escape into the abdominal cavity, where they're broken down and cleaved away by white cells. But if you pay attention very closely to the diagram below, the ovary is based very close to the fimbria, which is the opening to the fallopian tube. Therefore, we have the potential that some of the semen and sperm will wash over that area. Theoretically speaking, if this effect is real in mammals, this can mean that the potential implications are that semen alone containing within an epigenetic profile modifier may affect the DNA expression of eggs inside the ovary. You see, females are born with all the eggs they will ever have. Therefore, all those eggs sitting there could be getting modified epigenetically by one of the sexual partners of a female. I know that this sounds almost ludicrous, but the evidence is there. However, there is a greater problem with all of this. If the effect is noticeable in flies, which of course is a much smaller animal than ourselves, this effect could be noticeable in humans in epigenetic terms. I will discuss more about epigenetics later, but let's assume that a gene or a strand of DNA will be expressed differently if there is a different epigenetic modifier acting upon it. Therefore, if this effect is real, it has many potential implications on the resulting phenotype, that is, the proteins that cells may express in all the organs of the human body. This brings us to an even more interesting part, to newer and more notable research involving humans and monkeys. The impression so far has been that our immune system will attack and destroy foreign cells. This is to say, any cells that belong to someone else will be cleared off by our immune system as they possess foreign DNA and express different identifying proteins that our immune system recognizes and produces antibodies against. Recently, microchimerism has been discovered in the brains of females. That means that Y chromosomes have been identified in the brains of deceased females. This is something that should not be happening, but evidence all around us tells us that it is happening. The results are replicated in rhesus monkeys, and additionally scientists suspect that those Y chromosomes are not just sitting there, but they also have a function. This article will not discuss the function of the Y chromosomes in the female brain. However, the implications that the mere presence of the Y chromosome may have when we discuss telephony are vast. This means that the male cells can potentially survive inside the female body. Theoretically, those Y chromosomes do not simply exist on their own, but they exist inside their own cells. Those cells are presumed to have come from the fetus that the woman kept inside of her for 9 months. However, some of the females with Y chromosomes in them never gave birth. They could have been pregnant and lost a baby. But where those cells came from is not really the subject of the discussion, because that Y chromosome is identical to the Y chromosome of the father and hence the partner. While antigens from another human being are usually recognized by the immune system as foreign and are thus attacked, these Y chromosomes contained within cells are allowed to exist within the female for many years. That is, they are never attacked by the immune system. The brain, gametes, and eyes are part of the human body whereby the immune response is usually highly modified and reduced. These areas form privileged areas of the immune system. As such, there are areas where such a foreign body, such as a cell, is more likely to exist without much interference from our immune system. By considering these studies, is it really that unlikely that the ovaries containing the eggs from birth can be epigenetically modified by the presence of semen inside women? With the increase in the amount of sexual partners, your child might be your child, but epigenetically, whose child is it really? I know this sounds like a strange question, but consider the action of epigenetics for a moment. First, let's consider an epigenetics definition. The DNA is wrapped around nucleosomes and further compacted, such as in the picture above, to form chromosomes. The epigenetic proteins are used to uncoil the DNA and allow each cell to express specific genes. In actual fact, this is how phenotype is made. The effects of DNA expression are largely affected by what way the DNA is folded and what portion of it is accessible to be transcribed. Small changes in the environment awaken different genes, and although how this occurs is largely a mystery, many epigenetic mechanisms have been identified. Therefore, epigenetic changes occurring at the level of the egg or somewhere else that we have yet to identify can play a huge role in the latter on expression of genes, the overall phenotype of that organism, and potentially affect the predisposition of that organism to genetically linked diseases. This article is largely speculation, but the evidence is there for the speculation to occur. There is also a hangout whereby I discussed with Dark Knight about the potential implications of the telegony study. However, knowing what we know now, the floodgates are open for further research to occur and for the truth to be uncovered. Thank you very much for listening. Please access the links below for any of the research that I have quoted and watch the video where I had a discussion with Dark Knight regarding this. This was Nick Wachowski talking about all things man.